start with quarterback position. Hopefully, Sooner fans at this point are comfortable with not comparing Dillon Gabriel to his predecessors and being comfortable with a quarterback who is easily a top 15 to 20 quarterback in the nation. And if he gets a downfield threat to emerge this season, maybe even better than that.
Yeah, with Dillon Gabriel, I think the point of criticism that most Sooner fans have for him last year was the inability to hit on the deep ball. And to be fair, there are some areas of his game that and he would acknowledge this as well and has acknowledged it. There are some areas of his game last year that were not as sharp as they needed to be in order to put the Sooners in winning position. That said, the vast majority, 85 to 90% of Oklahoma's issues last fall originated on the defensive side of the ball. If you look at the statistics, you look at the numbers, you look at all the advanced metrics, by anyone's standard, Dillon Gabriel was a solidly above average quarterback for Oklahoma a year ago and had a solidly above average season. Now, that ought to be good enough in most cases, but at the University of Oklahoma, you have the lingering memories of Baker Mayfield, Kyler Murray, Caleb Williams, spectacular quarterback play, right? And Dillon Gabriel, his game is not necessarily conducive to the spectacular, but that's what Sooner fans have come to expect from that position. So, it feels like 2022 was a little bit of an adjustment period, a little bit of a reset for these fans to come to terms with reasonable expectations for what their quarterback should and will do each Saturday, and kind of cemented an understanding that with where this program's at now, post Lincoln Riley, they're not going to be able to, nor should they, rely on the quarterback to firebomb them to victory on any given weekend. So the Sooners are going to need to be stronger on defense in 2023 than they were in 2022. But as long as Dillon Gabriel maintains the same level of play that he maintained throughout the 2022 campaign, and certainly if he can build on it and take a step in terms of accuracy, in terms of overall production, both with his legs as well as with his arm, that's going to put the Sooners in position to contend for a Big 12 championship, Mark.
Now, Parker, if they need a stopgap, much like they did in 2022, that turned into a near disaster. And shoot, Sooner fans, you would say just flat out disaster, Mark. Looking at their situation this year, it's going to be Jackson Arnold, correct? There is no veteran presence there to fill the void.
Well, there is a veteran presence, but that veteran presence is Davis Beville, who kind of became the target of a lot of Sooner fans' frustration because he drew the start against Texas in the Red River Shootout at the Cotton Bowl, and the Sooners' offense was absolutely dormant for all 60 minutes of that football game. And more often than not, Jeff Lebby, the offensive coordinator at Oklahoma, was more confident giving the ball to tight end Braden Willis out of the Wildcat formation, snapping him the football, than letting Davis Beville drop back and throw. So, yeah, Jackson Arnold is going to be QB2 for Oklahoma this fall. If injury does befall Gabriel at some point in time, I think what Arnold has done at the high school level and the overall skill set he brings to the table lends optimism that things are not going to fall apart and the wagon's not going to completely break down if you lose your starting quarterback. Now, granted, he's more inexperienced in the system. There are still some concerns, but just in terms of what that kid can do from the quarterback position, if he's pressed into action, leaves Sooner fans much more confident in their chances to keep things afloat sans Gabriel than a year ago at this time.
Parker, we move on to wide receiver, and Theo Weiss, Marvin Mims have moved on, let alone there is no Hollywood Brown, CeeDee Lamb type there. Is this the sore spot on the offense in regards to trying to find that guy that is the go-to, take the top off the defense kind of guy?
Yeah, I think that's a big question for Oklahoma offensively right now. Look, the backfield is in great shape between Gavin Sawchuk and Javante Barnes, both of whom ran all over Florida State in the Cheez-It Bowl, both topping 100 yards. The offensive line is never really a question mark under the direction of Bill Bedenbaugh, who's one of the finest positional coaches in the country. And the Sooners bring back fifth-year senior tight end Austin Stogner, who, when healthy, is one of the most dominant players in the country at that position. Spent the first 3 years of his collegiate career at Oklahoma before transferring to South Carolina for the 2022 campaign, and is now back at OU for his final year of eligibility. That leaves wide receiver, though, and you do lose your top contributor a year ago in Marvin Mims, the go-to guy for Dillon Gabriel. right now there is no superstar. There is no, and more than that, there is no proven A1 option at wide receiver for Oklahoma. Jalil Farouk and Drake Stoops, Bob's son, are the only returning receivers for Oklahoma that have caught more than 3 passes in a Sooner uniform. So that ought to lend some perspective on what Oklahoma's working with. Now, don't get it twisted. There is a ton of talent in that room. It's not proven talent, but it is talent nonetheless. A guy I'm really high on, Nick Anderson, the rising sophomore out of Katy, Texas, battled injuries throughout his freshman campaign. Had those injuries not befallen him, he would likely have played a lot more snaps than he did. Jaden Gibson was a top 100 player out of high school. He's a rising sophomore from Winter Garden, Florida, 6'5", and can run like the wind, provided he's able to get past some mental issues that have plagued him and manifested in the form of drops in the past. He can be expected to take a productive leap. Then you have converted cornerback DJ Graham, who's one of the most athletic players on the entire roster. Gavin Freeman, who flashed last year as a true freshman, he enters his sophomore season as kind of the, not necessarily the backup to Drake Stoops. He brings a little bit more lightning to the table than Stoops does in terms of speed, but definitely has the potential to be a capable slot option for Oklahoma and should really see his production increase once Stoops graduates. And you look ahead to the 2024 season. But another guy I'm really, really high on is incoming freshman Jaquaze Pettaway, top 100 prospect who can crack 10.4 seconds in the 100 meters. Speed, explosiveness, agility in the open field, elusiveness, and great ball skills for somebody that's only about 5'11", 175 pounds. The Sooners also brought in truly elite speed in Texas transfer Brennan Thompson, whose personal best in the 100 meters in high school was 10.18, Mark, 10.18. So that's a guy that can run as well as anybody in college football. All in all, there is a lot of talent there. A lot of exciting pieces. Nobody that has really proven themselves outside of Farouk and Stoops to be a capable contributor in a collegiate offense, but plenty of players that are poised to take that next step and are going to get the opportunity, at the very least, to prove themselves this fall.
Wildcat skills aside, Braden Willis is going to be missed for his pass catching ability downfield, 7 touchdowns, 39 receptions. Is it a situation in which just Austin Stogner comes back in and becomes Austin Stogner of 2020 and 21, and that's good enough, or are there other candidates in place?
Yeah, what you got to recall about Austin Stogner is that last he was completely healthy, the first half of the 2020 season when he was a sophomore at Oklahoma. He led Oklahoma in pretty much every major receiving category until suffering that injury against Kansas that ultimately had him battling sepsis, or was it a staph infection? I can't totally recall, but very serious medical complications resulted in Stogner missing the back half of that 2020 season. But when healthy, there's a reason this guy was a top 100 prospect out of high school, top 5 nationally at his position. He is absolutely dominant when he is in his prime, not inhibited by injury. So, yeah, Stogner's the guy at tight end for Oklahoma. The rest of the room is kind of rounded out by Jason Llewellyn, a rising sophomore who primarily played special teams last year, Blake Smith, a transfer from Texas A&M, and then incoming freshman Cade McIntyre from the state of Nebraska. Another native Nebraskan, Caden Helms, is going into his redshirt freshman campaign, but right now is dealing with an injury that could put his status for the season in jeopardy. So from all that we know, or rather don't know about the tight end room, yeah, it's Austin Stogner and the rest right now. It's Austin Stogner and the crowd. If he is earning 80-90% of the snaps at tight end for Oklahoma in 2023, though, I'm one of those that actually believes Austin Stogner physically, in terms of what he brings to the tight end position, and this is no knock on Braden Willis, but I think Stogner is better than Braden Willis. I think he certainly has the potential to be more productive in the offense than Braden Willis. So it's a guy I'm very high on and a guy that should have a cornerstone role in the offense.
We've got Parker Thune here breaking down the Oklahoma offense. You can catch Parker, of course, on KREF Sports. It's Monday through Friday, noon Central Time. OU Insider as well on Rivals. You already mentioned it. Oklahoma fans got to see the future, and the future at its best in the bowl game against Florida State. Javante Barnes and then Gavin Sawchuk kind of catching up late in the season to what they could show us each and every week with 100+ yards in that game against a good Florida State defense. Is it simply going to be, is this going to be our shortest segment in terms of position units because it's just going to be 1, 2, and here we go? Or do you think the likes of Marcus Major, even Dalen Smothers or others will be needed for meaningful carries?
Yeah, I will say true freshman Caleb Hicks is a guy that's turned some heads throughout the summer. So he may work himself into a tertiary role in the backfield. Major certainly has that potential as well, but it's really the Sawchuk Barnes show. It's those two. Oklahoma historically has thrived using tandem, or rather backfield tandems. It's never really been one guy out of the backfield. It's always been a 2 running back attack. And that philosophy has not changed ever since DeMarco Murray took the reins as Oklahoma's running backs coach. He's now entering his 4th year with the program. And I think in Sawchuk and Barnes, he's got as talented a duo of running backs as he has ever had at Oklahoma. And as the Sooners have had, probably dating back to Joe Mixon and Samaje Perine, I would say. The ceiling is very high individually for both of those guys, and the ceiling is certainly very high for the Oklahoma backfield with those two heading up the committee.
Huge losses along the offensive line, 4 big contributors. Wanye Morris, of course, Anton Harrison, a first-round draft choice, also Chris Murray there, but 3 big transfers coming in as well for a revamped offensive line.
Yeah, so Walter Rouse, the transfer tackle from Stanford, expected to start opposite Tyler Guyton. At least to open the year. I'm of the opinion that Jake Sexton, the rising sophomore, is one of the 2 best tackles on this roster. Trouble is, he's working his way back from a severe knee injury that he suffered in the bowl game against Florida State. So I don't get the impression that Oklahoma is going to rush him along. Would be surprised, or yeah, I guess I would not be surprised, is what I'm trying to say, if by mid-season Sexton is back to full health and pushing Rouse for that starting left tackle job. Left tackle, right tackle. I get my tackles confused, Mark. But make no mistake, he's going to challenge Rouse down the line for that opportunity. If Rouse gives him even the slightest competitive window, then you move to the interior. Andrew Rame is back at the center position. McCade Matayer returns to try and hold on to that left guard spot that he occupied a year ago. I think he'll get a healthy push from Savion Byrd. And then Miami of Ohio transfer Caleb Schaefer, a 4-year starter for the Red Hawks. He enters the picture and is the odds-on favorite right now to start at right guard. So, gosh, now I'm completely turned around. Is it Schaefer at left? Matayer at right? For the life of me, Mark, I need to get sharper with this stuff. It's July. You can tell my brain is not nearly as polished as it should be. So hopefully once fall camp rolls around in August, I'm back to game shape. But yeah, the offensive line picture for Oklahoma, I mean, you got Bill Bedenbaugh at the controls. He's never been afraid to mix and match. And in essence, what you're going to get at Oklahoma is you're going to get the 5 best offensive linemen in some combination by the time the season kicks off. I reflect on the 2021 season in which Bill Bedenbaugh uprooted Tyrese Robinson from his longtime position at left guard to make him the Sooners starting right tackle because there was simply no better alternative. So he is not afraid to shuffle the deck, as it were, to find the option that's going to give the Sooners the most success in terms of protecting the quarterback and establishing the run. All the advanced metrics suggest that Oklahoma had one of the best offensive lines in the country a year ago. And yes, you do have to replace Harrison. You do have to replace Morris. That's easier said than done, but I don't sense that there should be any tangible drop off in terms of their level of play this year.